Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinskas.
Hey everyone, welcome to the No Woman Left Behind show. I'm Rosie Zilinskas. Today we're talking with Lisa Thompson because she is a confidence expert. She is going to clarify a lot of different things for us about confidence. Lisa Thompson is the founder and director of Self-Love Beauty. She is a confidence coach, podcast host, co-founder of Blue Wave Wellbeing, and an author. Her mission is to help individuals become unstuck, love themselves, and take personal action for self-improvements. I am telling you, this is going to be a very empowering conversation, so you don't want to miss this one. Stay tuned. Lisa, thank you so much for being with me today on this Saturday morning. Lisa, you are the host of the Confident podcast. I think that is such important work. And so before we start talking about all the awesome stuff that you do, I want to level set a little bit. And when we talk about confidence, obviously my podcast is about women in corporate trying to move up the ladder. What is it that we're talking about when we say the word confidence?
Yeah, I love that you're asking that question. So a lot of times people get confidence confused with self-love. They get it confused with self-esteem. And so really confidence is your belief in your own skills and talents and your abilities. So really when you think about confidence, it's do I have confidence in what I'm working on? Maybe your task, maybe that's finances, maybe that's human resources, writing. It's really about having that ability to believe in yourself. Because I think so many times, we get it confused of I'm not worthy. That's self-esteem, but it's really the confidence is in your belief in your abilities and talents. We all have it inside of us to do things, but so many times we get uncomfortable with starting that we don't even do it. And so when you start your confidence journey, it's really about understanding like, hey, my belief in my skills and abilities might be a little bit low when I start, but if I don't get started, I'm never going to have the confidence to really believe in those skills over time to really grow in our careers or anything that we're working on.
Right. I like the fact that you differentiated self-esteem. So I read that self-esteem is more internal versus confidence is external. Would you agree with that?
I think when you think about confidence is, if you put confidence without the self-confidence, sure, it would be more external, but self-confidence is really still in your belief in your abilities and your talents. Self-esteem is how you perceive your worth. So maybe you have confidence that that if the teacher was to ask, if you were in a meeting, let's use that, like a work setting. If you were in a meeting and you got called on, you'd be able to answer the question because you believe in your skills and your talents, but you might not want to be picked on because you're too scared that, oh, am I worthy of being able to answer it? What will people think? And then that's really the lack of self-esteem that we have in ourselves. So when you have more self-esteem, you want to raise your hand. You want to see your worth. You want to have it shine. Same thing with confidence. It's really about the more that you have it, the more that you, it's perceived externally, I would say, to other people.
I really appreciate that distinction because I think you're right. We confuse self-esteem with self-confidence. Okay, so when we're talking about corporate leaders, I think you and I started to have a conversation that sometimes corporate leaders are aggressive. Sometimes they're, just rude, sometimes even, or just very demanding. And obviously they're worried about the bottom line, so they have their own worries. I don't know that they necessarily are thinking about other people and how they, the leader, make other people feel when they're being aggressive and that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the energy that we talked about previously, as far as the male energy and the female energy?
Absolutely. So this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. Obviously, confidence is my main, that's where I'm the expert at. But when you think about feminine energy versus masculine energy, we were all born a specific way in some way. You know, we carry some type of trait. And a lot of times over the course of our lives, maybe sometimes it starts in middle school or high school, girls specifically are taught that, you know, you need to be a little bit more assertive. You need to a little bit more demanding. But at that time in our lives, it's also looked kind of bad in a way. But then as we get into college, as we walk into our career life, you know, we see the tables being filled with men. We see the tables being filled with, okay, in order to get to the top, I have to do X, Y, Z. And what we do in that way is we lose that feminine energy, which means that we're not leading as much with empathy. We're not putting the human first with our teams. And we're not looking at it from those aspects. Instead, we're looking at it from like, okay, we have this goal to meet. We have to meet this money thing without thinking about the people in between. I mean, think about it. How many, like, when you think about, I'm going to use the example of mothers. Mothers have this energy about them. They are very motherly. They care so much for their children. They care about their kids' friends, you know, and you think about it in that aspect. But then in the workplace, we're taught that you need to care, quote unquote, but at the same time, you need to be very demanding. You need to be pushing. You need to be, in a way, having that masculine energy of that straight shooter type of quality. And what we're doing is we're not being ourselves then. Point blank, we're missing out on this energy. And I have to say, I truly believe that women in leadership are probably the best when they follow and think about their feminine energy. I mean, take any type of woman in leadership, and what do we love about them? We love certain people, at least, like when you think about Michelle Obama, or you think about the owner of Spanx, like what you love about them is that their personality is vibrant, that you can relate to them, that they have that humanizing piece of them. But then you look at the women who scare you in the corporate world, that scare you, and they share a different type of energy that doesn't make us feel or resonate with them. And so I think that women are missing an opportunity to really bring out that feminine energy that they've had all along.
And when a leader, how does it change when someone recognizes that they're leading with the masculine energy? Say a woman thinks that they have to be, you know, just cold and aggressive and demanding. How would you say things shift to them recognizing that they're leading with masculine energy versus feminine energy? And then what changes?
Yeah. So I think one thing that you have to do is have self check-ins with yourself. So it's really easy to go to external people. But honestly, if you ask your employees, they might be a little bit nervous to tell you, like, yeah, you are a little demanding. So it's really about that self check. Just like what I said about self-confidence and self-esteem, it's all about the self. So you have to check in with yourself and say, am I being true to who I am? Is the assertiveness, is the demanding, is kind of like the cold way okay with me? And if it's not, then that's when you have to step back and look at, okay, what about me do my friends like? What do I like about myself? And maybe that's when you can notice, like, wow, I really care about X, Y, Z. Like I always make sure that when my friends' birthdays come, I give them a gift and I say gratitude. I make sure that I'm always showing up for people. So then you have to do that in your work as well. So like think about maybe some feminine energies that you show with your kids or your friends, and then bring that into the workplace as well. And also if you're struggling, my biggest thing that I tell people is you need to invest in yourself. And if you are struggling in those aspects of wondering, it's like, okay, the reason why there are experts out there to help you is because they've been doing it for so long. And so that's when you reach out and say like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I know I need to do some self check-ins, but like, what else could I be doing to really bring out that feminine energy to be a stronger leader? Because D&I and the belonging piece is diversity, inclusion, and belonging is very, very big right now, but it should have always been big. And so as women, we have this opportunity to utilize our voices and lead from within to make people feel like they belong, because so many people have so many skills and so many qualities, but they hold it back because of the culture that they're in, because they're too scared that I have to fit. They think I'm a peg that can't fit into the box, basically. And what we want is like, yeah, we don't want you to fit. We want you to stand out. We want to utilize your skill set. So as women, I truly believe we have this opportunity to make other people rise as well.
That's awesome. I believe you said that there's a shift in the, I don't want to call it age group, but in newer leaders that are up and coming. Can you talk a little bit about what you've observed with new leaders rising up in the corporate world?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. I think that people want to work hard, but they want to play hard. I think that that's always been a saying that we've used, and I keep using quotes when I say these things, but basically like we've said this stuff and it's true. But I think what I'm noticing with this new generation is that they are going after organizations and companies that have corporate responsibility, that have work-life balance, that care about their individuals. They're caring less about the salary per se and caring more about the benefits that come with it. And when I say benefits, I mean, do you care about their mental well-being? Do you care about helping them grow? Do you focus on their professional development? Like, what do you want as a company and what do you want as an employee? And what they're basically saying is that they want to belong. And they want to feel like the company is people first, which is very intriguing because I think if you ask any generation, everybody wanted that this whole time. But I think that this generation that's coming up behind me is just very much more vocal about it because they've watched my parents, my generation, be exhausted to the point that we have mental health issues that we've never talked about. And I think that that's a very intriguing conversation where we can learn from this generation of standing up for ourselves. But also I'm learning too, like they don't want to work for someone that scares them. They want to work for someone that they respect. So I think that there's something very intriguing about that. So a lot of people think women empowerment means that you can't push someone, you can't challenge them. And as a woman in leadership, no, that's exactly what we should be doing. We should be challenging this next generation. We should be challenging each other, but it's how we do it. That's the difference. I should scare you a little bit so that you want to continue to challenge yourself, but not so much that you're having so much anxiety that you don't want to come to work. And there's a fine line in that, definitely. But I also believe that if you come alongside someone, instead of saying, well, I'm your leader, do as I say, you come along them and say, hey, I want you to own this. I want you to be empowered to lead. You're giving someone that leadership, that confidence that I've been talking about to really believe in their skills and abilities. And then you're going to see more people flourish. And I know I'm going about that in a roundabout way of answering your question, but I wanted to share that as well.
No, I think that's great. And I do feel that the younger generations coming into the workplace, they don't put up with being mistreated or they don't put up with others being mistreated. And there's not as much longevity in that generation as there is in even my generation. So I've been employed for a very long time, and other people that are coming up in the industry, they're maybe 3-5 years and then they move on to other areas. So I think that's very interesting that this newer, younger generation, and I don't want to necessarily call them millennials, but I think because some of those individuals are Gen Xers too, but I do feel that there's some kind of awakening as far as what they're seeking in life, and it's not necessarily monetary, like you said. So when you talked about corporate responsibilities, can you talk a little bit more about what you mean when you say corporate responsibility?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of a lot of employees want to see, how is a corporation giving back? How are they utilizing what they bring to this world to help back into their communities? A lot of people want to give back, but they just don't know how. So I've noticed, even when I used to work in recruiting like 5 years ago for a corporation that I worked for, that was a question that they brought up. Well, what's your social impact? What's your sustainability? How are you helping certain causes? And what I'm noticing is that a lot of individuals are looking for companies that align to their core values, which is extremely important because we are trying to find more purpose in our work more than ever. And as someone who teaches purpose, confidence, and passion, and all of those things, like, I love seeing that. I think that that's extremely important. But I always challenge employees to also look at it as, okay, if your company's going to do all of this for you, what are you going to do for your company? Because I also truly believe that we live in a society where we have all of these things and we want all of these things, but we also have to be willing to put the work in. And that's a difference, because I think that so many times we ask, and we're like, well, this company should be doing X, Y, Z, but I'm going to take the easy way out. And that's not okay. That is one stipulation that I do have when it comes to all of this, is that if you want all of these things, then you need to also have your best foot forward, because that's really unfair to ask of a company to give up so many resources and fund all of these things if you're not willing to put the work in as well. And I do believe it's that give and take.
I think that's a fantastic point, because you're right. I think a lot of employees do want to take, and then when it comes to really, contributing, then you're like, that's too much work. So now, as far as women in their careers, when they're trying to move up the ladder, I know that sometimes they might have setbacks. How do you deal with setbacks? What is your recommendation when someone tries really hard to apply for a position and they don't get it? What is your recommendation when it comes to that confidence at that point?
Yeah, well, I always tell people that in the moment, it's going to suck. And I can't tell you anything different, that in that moment, I can't change that for you, because I still have my moments where I get rejected, or I have a failure, and I literally sit in the suck. I allow myself 24 hours, not going to lie. I tell everybody this, I allow myself that time, but then I tell myself, like, hey, you get 24 hours, feel all the feels, do whatever you need to do to feel bad for yourself. But then after 24 hours, you have to make a decision. Do you allow this to define you, or do you move forward? And it's a rule that I have. And even the other day, I had something come up, and I gave myself 36 hours, not gonna lie, I gave myself a little bit more time, but it was because I needed that. I knew that it was just really hard on me. But then I realized something too. It's like, I have a decision. We all have choices. We all have this map in front of us of which road. We can go left, right, we can go forward, we can go backwards. And setbacks are going to happen. But I look at setbacks as an opportunity, because it's like, okay, you get to set back and now reevaluate. Did I even want that job that I applied for? Did I want that? And if I really wanted it, okay, then you need to have people look at your resume. You need to practice your interviews. You need to do some networking, and if you're realizing and asking yourself these questions and you're realizing, I actually didn't want it, then that gives you the opportunity to be like, okay, what do I actually want? And then you do some research on the job opportunities that are out there, and you see what makes you come alive when you're reading the descriptions. And so I look at it as a twofold. It gives you the opportunity to really move forward and push yourself if you really wanted that job, or it gives you a moment to step back and be like, I didn't actually want that. I thought I just did, because a lot of us have that. I worked in communications and marketing for a very long time. It's so easy for me to keep saying, like, oh, I could go get a marketing job, but do I want that? No, I love what I do. And I think that that's what you have to remind yourself, is you can take the easy way out, or you can really challenge yourself when it comes to a setback.
I think the quote of the day is going to be sit in the suck. I think that is so true, because you do have to feel those feelings. And a lot of times people don't don't necessarily take the time to process and feel those feelings. And even if you put your best foot forward, sometimes it's just not going to go your way. And, that's when I say it just wasn't meant to be, and there's something better out there waiting for you. I also like the fact that you said you have to then reevaluate, like maybe it was your resume, maybe it was your interviewing skills, maybe it was that you need to practice some mock interviewing. So those are all really good things, but that's post the sitting in the suck. So when you're in the suck, you do the ice cream, the pizza, the chips, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And like, I let myself cry. I think that that's the biggest thing, is that I allow myself to be very vulnerable. And I think one thing too is like, instead of finding crutches, like, yes, I have maybe I'll have an ice cream or maybe I'll have a glass of wine, but really what I do is I feel the feels, meaning I cry, I bawl, I write, I journal. And that's how, when I say sitting in the suck, I really take the moment to feel the feelings, because what we do as a society is we really hold those feelings in. And if we don't deal with the emotions right at that moment, you will get the next job because you just pushed forward and you had never felt into your feelings. And that can cause over time a big moment where, your mental health could be very affected in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I know earlier in the call, you said that self-care is different. How is self-care different?
Yeah, so self-care has 5 different elements to it. It's really about that physical, that mental, that spiritual, that social, all different aspects that really come out to play. And I'm missing one of them right now because I don't like talking. There's 5 of them. And I think that what we have to do sometimes is notice, like, where am I struggling? Where do I need some self-care? Because when people hear self-care, they still think the bubble baths, which honestly, I love those. I very much love those, but it's really about how you do mental stimulation. How are you taking care of your mind? How are you taking care of yourself spiritually? And all of those have to do then with your physical and mental health, which is extremely important. And so self-care to me is extremely important. I have my own ways. And I think one of the coolest things about self-care, same thing with self-confidence, self-esteem, it's all about you. It's got that self word in it. It's not what everybody else is doing. It's what works for you. And so I have my own ways of self-care that are very different from the people in my life. But we respect each other for that. Like, hey, you need that time out. You go do your self-care. I'm going to take care of myself. And I think that that's one of the most beautiful things is when you know what you need. And then in the moments of feeling like things suck, or maybe you just need a mental break, you're able to pick up those tools out of your toolbox to really care for yourself.
Okay, that's a great distinction. So Lisa, what would you say to a woman that is trying to do all the things that you're describing, taking care of themselves with the self-care and then working on their skills and the traits for their confidence, and things aren't happening for them as far as moving up the ladder? What do you think they can work on or maybe look at in a different way that could help them get unstuck? Because a lot of our women are stuck in a job that they have, and they may not even be aware that they're holding themselves back.
Yeah, so I would say a few things. So the first one is always give yourself some grace. What we do as women, we are so hard on ourselves, and I attest to that so much. I'm very hard on myself, but if we don't give ourselves grace, that's when it really it's really hard to get out of the being stuck part, because you're not even like allowing yourself some grace. The second thing I would say is do not put a time limit on it. So much time. I'm a very goal-oriented person. So are a lot of people. And we think like in 6 months, I have to have XYZ figured out. Well, I think we can all agree, no matter what in our lives, that's never really happened in the time that we've probably wanted it to. So yes, it's important to have that goal, but understand that there has to be flexibility with that. The third thing I would say is that you need to start asking yourself the hard questions. Am I stuck in not moving up the ladder because the ladder that I'm trying to go on isn't actually for me? because I think so many times we don't ask ourselves the hard questions, because our friends are like, yeah, girl, you should be moving up that. Why aren't you? You know, you deserve this and you deserve that. But if at the end of the day, you aren't even aligned in the heart to want that, I'm sorry, like the universe is not going to give it to you, nor should you want that, you know? And so I think you have to start asking yourself the hard questions. Why do I want this? What joy will bring this to my life? Is it actually because I want it, or is it because everybody else wants it for me? And then also it's defining what success means to you, because you might be stuck because you don't really know what success means to you. Maybe you've already hit that in the corporate job that you have, or any job, and maybe you need to turn right or turn left or take a step back. I don't know what that means for each person individually, but those are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And I think the thing is that you have to sit down. You have to sit in a quiet space. You have to be okay with the quiet, without your phone, without the distractions, even 5 minutes a day. Reflecting on it is better. And I know people always say, well, I don't have time for XYZ. I think we all have 5 minutes. You can find 5 minutes. If you can find 5 minutes, then 5 minutes a day is going to be a game changer for you. I'm not asking for an hour. I would love an hour myself, but I don't even have that. And so it's really important that you focus at least for a little bit a day.
I think that's a great suggestion. Like, asking yourself those hard questions. And I think you're right. Sometimes people think that they want to continue to move up the ladder because they want to continue to make more money. But sometimes I think the thing that we do need to ask you is ask ourselves, obviously, if you're already making X amount of dollars, is increasing that salary by 10% going to make you happier? Is the salary actually going to make you happier? Or is maybe volunteering and giving back to other people going to make you happier, you know, be more
Amen.
fulfilling?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Lisa, tell me, how did you get into this work? Like, what is a little bit about your journey? Because I think everything that you're saying, I mean, is completely resonating with me. And I think, again, the quote of the day is sitting in the suck and then asking the hard questions. But I'd like to know a little bit about your journey, because you have accomplished so much in your short career that I know you have. And so I'd like to learn a little bit more about your journey, but more specifically, how did you get into the confidence work? Because I think that's something that all women really need to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I appreciate you asking that. So, because I am very real and raw about my own journey, because I think it's important for people to know that I just didn't become confident overnight. Heck, I'm still having my moments where I lack it in some areas. And it really comes back down to, if we get to the root cause, it takes you back to the middle school, it takes you back to the moment where people started to tell me that I was loud, that I was too much, that I was too driven, I was too smart, all those things that I should have been appreciating, but I started to downplay myself. And then as high school began, I was playing multiple sports. I was in a bunch of things and I wanted to be the best at everything. And I felt like when I wasn't good, I got so much into that perfectionism mindset where I didn't feel like I was good enough. And then I would be so hard on myself. And so I really think it started there. And then high school's a really tough time for body image. You know, I was never one of those girls who was that stick figure. And I compared myself so much. If I wasn't as good as someone else, I had that comparison mindset. And then I went off to college, culture shock to the T. I'm from a very small town. And then I went to a big university, Michigan State, and I had now a whole pool of people to compare myself to. But through all of that, I also feel like I was able to hide a lot of my lack of confidence because I was born a very driven person. So I worked multiple jobs. I, really knew what I wanted for my career, or so I thought. And it really came down to when I left college. I got my first corporate job, and again, another culture shock. You're going from college into the big girl lifestyle. And that's really where I noticed that I needed to do something about it. I was struggling. I was not happy. I needed to make new friends. I had moved to a new state. And so I really started to write about my journey. That's actually where it really started, was just writing. Blogs were not popular at the time that I started a blog. And so God forbid at that time you share your opinion out into the world. So I got a lot of criticism, actually, a lot of criticism from people, and people that were like, why would you ever tell anybody what you're going through? And that shares you right there that the stigma was very strong then. But for some reason, I didn't give that up. I continued to move forward. And within 2 years, we had over 200 contributor writers sharing their stories, because I truly believe that women have stories, and I'm going to relate to some and others are going to relate to others. And so long story short, through all of this, I really just found this passion for, I went through something so much that I did not love myself. I did not respect myself. I didn't even know where to begin. So I did a lot of research, and I really knew that this was a purpose and a calling for myself. And so over a course of 10 years, it'll be 10 years this year for me, I've really transformed to become a confidence expert, because so many women go through these moments in their lives that they're not embracing. They're not sitting in the suck. Like I said, they're not really having the hard conversations with themselves. And so what I really want for women and anybody is to know that they can reach their full potential. But it takes a long time, and that's okay, as long as you never give up on yourself.
Gosh, I absolutely love that. And so now, obviously, you have the podcast. So tell me a little bit about your podcast. What obviously is called the Confident Podcast, but tell me a little bit about that. How long have you had the podcast, and what do your listeners get out of your podcast?
Yeah, so we started. I started the Confident Podcast. It was called the Confident Girl Podcast in 2017. That's really where I got started. And if I'm going to be honest, if you listen back to 2017, probably wasn't as good as it is today, because I didn't really know what I was doing. Besides, I just knew that people needed to hear messages about confidence. And also they needed to hear stories from others to know that they're not alone. I think the biggest thing that we do is we get into our heads that I'm the only one that thinks this. I'm the only one going through it. And so what I wanted to do was bring on real people, raw stories, and then also provide tools for individuals. And so when someone listens to my podcast, they're not only hearing my story, so I'm very, very open about that. I talk all about my story and all about my journey, but then I also bring on guests to really help individuals grow and have the tools to help them with their confidence. And so that's really what we're about. We've been around for 5 years. We've grown tremendously, and we're so grateful for that. And so I just always share with people that our podcast is all about providing you with opportunities to grow in your confidence and your self-love journey and really learn from others.
I really love that. And I am a listener as well. And so I want to go back to one thing that you said earlier. You obviously coach both men and women. One of the things that I've noticed about men and women is that women sometimes hold on to things a lot longer than men do. Have you and the other thing that I think I had mentioned to you is women are much more permission driven. It's almost like they need permission to either speak up or apply for jobs, things like that. What have you noticed, or what can you share with us as far as an observation between men's actions or thoughts and women's actions and thoughts? I'm curious if you've noticed anything in your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that when you think about root causes of where maybe our traumas or our triggers come from, women want to know it right away. They want to figure it out, and they want to have an action plan in place. They want to figure it out because we want to help people and we want to help ourselves. Men tend to know that they have issues, but they let it really, really go deep into them. And then they don't ask for help until very last minute. And I know some women do that too, but even, I know a few men that I've been working with, and watching them over time, they know that they have a problem, or they know that there's some issues that they need to focus, but they don't want to take care of that, because that means getting uncomfortable and being more vulnerable. Women tend to be a little bit more open to that. They're more open to, okay, let's open this wound. It's going to suck a little bit, but we'll get through it. And they'll talk about their feelings more. Men have a very much harder time with that. But I also think in a group setting, what I've noticed in group settings, it's kind of the opposite. I've had a lot more men be vulnerable in group settings than women. So that just shows you an observation between like one-on-one and within group settings, which is very intriguing to me. But it also reminds us, and I think one of the coolest things is when you work in group settings with both men and women, it helps everybody see, hey, we're all going through it. We just handle it differently. And then the more that the men open up, the more women feel comfortable opening up, because they're kind of back to your point about permission. It's like, okay, they're being vulnerable. Now I'm going to be a little bit more vulnerable. And so that is a permission thing. I think that we'll see for a while. I think women are still trying to find their voice, because it is very, how our voices come off sometimes can be perceived in many ways. And I think many women are more scared of how they're going to come off with what they say, but men aren't scared. They kind of say what's on their mind, and then everybody else kind of formulates around them. When women say something, it could come off in a strong way to some people, and then it's kind of pushes people back in some. Is it right? Is it wrong? No, but I would say that that's the society that we live in right now. And so we're trying to figure that out and have more women have their voices be heard.
Awesome. And I truly hope that starts changing. I read a statistic from a clinical psychologist that said that girls' confidence peaks at age 9. And I was a little heartbroken when I read that, because gosh, like if our confidence peaks at age 9, then we have all these women going through life just suffering because of the lack of confidence, which is why I think your work is so important, for women specifically, but people in general, obviously with both, with everybody. But well, Lisa, this has been.
Yeah, and I'll just
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to caveat off that really quick. I also want to share that there is a study that shows that people lose their creativity at the age of 5 if parents don't help their children have that creativity. And I share that creative side because a lot of, we all have this creative artistic side to us in a certain way. Maybe you're an engineer, maybe you're a doctor, maybe you're a writer. We all have this way. And if you as a child don't get that creativity, then it does really hurt your self-esteem and confidence over time, because you aren't formulating certain things in your brain. So I think that that's also important for any mom out there to know that, like, if your kid is being wacky and crazy at the age of 5, let them be. Let them wear the the clothes that don't match. Let them have the hairdo that they want, because that will help them in their 40s. That will help them in their 50s, because they will remember, I was me. I was able to be creative and someone loved me for it. So when they hit the age of 9, then their confidence and their self-esteem is going to be a little bit higher than the other people who weren't able to do that at the age of 5. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Oh gosh, no, I think that's perfect, because the other thing, just to add to that, is that helicopter parenting is actually hurting girls' confidence, because parents, and I was guilty of this, and had I known differently, I would have probably parented differently. But you as a parent try to ease all as much pain and suffering of your child as much as you can, but at the same time of you trying to do everything for them, you're not letting your kids, specifically girls, problem solve. And if they don't problem solve, that's going to translate into them not knowing or believing in themselves, which ultimately translates into them earning up to $2 million less than males, just simply by not feeling confident to negotiate. So it's all connected, so, and it all goes to the root causes to the roots of your life. Right. So interestingly. Okay. So I wanted to ask you one more question, which is, can you share 2 actionable tips that women can implement in their lives today so that they can become unstuck or feel like a little bit more confident in their careers?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one I would say, I love affirmations, but I always tell people to take a step further. Instead of using I am affirmations, ask yourself, what do you like about yourself and what are you great at? So that would be tool number 1 that I would say is, affirmations are extremely important. All of my clients use them, but you have to ask yourself, what do you like about yourself? That's a huge question. And what are you great at? because if you can't define those things, how can you expect someone to give you that job raise or anything like that if you can't even define how great you are as a person? So that's step one, I would say. And step two is know that your journey is different than someone else's, and that reflection and slowing down and sitting in the suck when things happen. But also, I always tell anybody, I was never an advocate for journaling because I really didn't enjoy it for years. That is what I live by now, because it is a brain dump for you. It allows you to really reflect and sit. And if it's 5 minutes a day, spend 5 minutes on yourself a day. I'm not asking for an hour. I'm not asking for 2, but 5 minutes can be really important with your growth. So I would say that those are 2 things that are very short and sweet. And then I'm just going to add one other thing. I would always tell anybody, if you don't have the answers, someone probably can help you. And I encourage women so much to invest in yourself. Invest in yourself. It is so easy for us to go and buy $200 worth of clothes. But imagine if you spent that $200 investing in your growth in a different way. In order for you to make more pay and to do things like, you want to invest in yourself. And I always tell everybody that, yes, it's going to cost you some money, but the only way that you're actually going to pay attention to the process and pay attention to growth is if you pay to play. Because when anything's handed to us free, we don't take it as seriously. And so when you invest in yourself, you're going to take yourself more seriously.
Gosh, I totally agree. And for everybody listening, all of Lisa's contact information will be in the blog. Lisa, any final words of wisdom?
I would just say, thank you so much for having me. As always, it's just an honor to talk about confidence. And I would say to anybody out there, give yourself some grace. Know that we are all suffering in some way or another. We all want to see women rise, and it's time for you to use your inner voice to change the world.
Awesome. All right, everybody, that's a wrap. I truly believe that this was a very empowering conversation, especially if you're in the corporate world and you're trying to move up the ladder. I am going to recap the 3 tips that Lisa gave us. Tip number 1, ask yourself what you like best about yourself and what you are great at. Lisa says that if you can't define those things, then how do you expect someone else to give you the job raise if you can't define how great you are? Tip number 2, know that your journey is different than someone else's. Reflection and slowing down and sitting in the suck. I think that's my favorite phrase now, sitting in the suck whenever things happen. Journaling is also great for a brain dump, and it allows you to reflect, which is important for your growth. She added tip number 3, which is, if you don't have the answers, then someone else can help you. This actually has to do with investing in yourself. It's easy to buy a $200 bag or clothes at Target or wherever. So imagine if you invest that money in yourself. So she says, yes, it's going to cost you money, but it's the only way that you're going to pay attention in the process and in your growth. So she says, you're going to have to pay to play. If you invest in yourself, you're going to take yourself more seriously. So I think those are 3 fantastic tips. If you have any suggestions on any career development topics that you would like me to cover or talk about more, please email me or DM me. All my contact information is going to be on my blog on the nowomanleftbehind.com website. And Lisa's information will be on the blog as well. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends, because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.